Greetings, pilgrims. Welcome to another episode of the Polygon Pilgrimage. And today I want to show you some very exciting 10 different ways I've used the Cube 3D, the Shape Mapper, and the new changes to the Splatter Circular nodes, new inside of Substance Designer 2017. I'm on .2.1. So, starting at the top of the list here, we have some stylized scale mail armor. So here is a little preview of what that looks like. And let's go ahead and take a look at the node structure here and talk about how that works. We're going to take our final outputs here along for the ride and connect things up so we can see each of these 10 different ways that we've used these 3 new nodes, okay? Well, 2 new nodes and some changes to an existing node, okay? All right, so here is our stylized scale mail, and you'll see that it responds to the light very well. That's this really cool pattern, just a little bit of experimentation, and I think it turned out really neat. So let's take a look at how this works. So if you're not familiar, this is the Cube 3D node, and this here is what you get. And then if you drag this little circle around, you can change the angle of this. So let me just see if I can create one up here for you because I don't want to mess this one up. But we'll put a Cube 3D node down here. And now, this is what the defaults are. So here's the default values. So you have your orientation, 0.25, and then size of 1 all the way across, and then a scale of 0.25. So if I click and drag this, you'll see what happens here. Is the cube actually changes orientation in space here. And by using this in clever ways, we've created all kinds of things here. So I move this around, something like this. And if you change the scale, see what that's doing? So that's the kind of thing that we've done here with the Cube 3D throughout, okay? So if we take a look here, so we changed our Cube 3D, and here are my numbers. They're kind of just, I eyeballed it. What I wanted to do was get as close to this corner, here, and then these sides as possible, okay? With a Z of 0.5. So then I did a transform and moved it to the corner, and I kept tiling on this so that it would go to all 4 corners. And by blending the 2 together with a max lighten, that puts the maximum values on top. So now I get this really cool repeating pattern. So then I threw that into a tile sampler, and you get your scale mail. And the tile sampler here, I have values of 8 and 8. And let's see what else. Everything else is pretty standard, just pattern input. Didn't really change anything else about it. Yeah. So there you go. Then, just to make our final outputs here, it's pretty simple. Let's come down here. The big magic here is using the ambient occlusion. I do this for all the nodes here, so I'll show you one time, and we'll kind of skip it for the others because it's the same kind of thing repeated. But a ambient occlusion node here, and you have to mess with your values here. Really, it's the height, depth, and the radius you're looking for. I have the quality set to 16 samples all the time. So then just changing these values until you get something that you like here, okay? Then I throw it through a high quality blur grayscale, or a blur high quality grayscale. Intensity here is a 0.77, just to kind of soften up those really harsh edges there because I wanted a more smooth transition between them. So then by using that, you see up here, I blend that with a color, and this is on multiply. So then whatever color I want them to be, you could make them a slightly blue, maybe some more of a steel color, something like that. So that becomes our final texture there. And then the same kind of thing, I went from here, because I like the softness of it, to become the normal map. And then again, with a levels adjustment for our roughness and our levels adjustment for a metallic. And then I did make this a little strange. So it's mostly metallic in the crevices, but that gives you like this really neat sheen to it when it moves in the light. So then for our height is just directly from here, and I put a little note here that for previewing it, you want to put the material, let's see over here, this got to a 0.35, so if we up that to a 0.35, it kind of looks best when you're moving it around. See, look at that. Really cool. Okay, and there you go. And then of course I do have one of these shapes or designs that we have here where we did a cutout, so everything needs an opacity map. So Opacity, you can do a couple of ways. I haven't really done the research to figure out which one is the most computationally efficient, but for now I'm just putting a solid color white into the opacity. Okay, so let's take our final outputs for a ride with us. Come down here. Now we're going to look at how to create some stylized stones and gravel. So here's a preview of what we get here. Again, we are primarily using, yes, we're using other nodes too, but primarily we're using the Cube 3D, the Shape Mapper, and the new changes to the Splatter Circular. So let's take a look at what we have here. So let's hook these up. See if I can do this. My computer is having an issue again, so I'm trying to work around it, but it's idling at a very high memory percentage, so I think that there's something running that I don't want, maybe malicious, who knows. So I'm looking into that. So I'm keeping a constant eye over on the corner. Anyway, so for our stylized stones gravel here, we're going to take Cube 3D, and a little known node that most people don't use is the skew grayscale. So by throwing this into skew grayscale, I'm going to put horizontal and 1 and a line center, and that makes it really stretch like this. Pretty cool. And don't worry, we have these little artifacts here. We'll handle those in a minute. And then I'm going to skew grayscale the other direction, a -1. And by blending the two together with a min darken, look what we get. If you just focus on the center thing, ignore the little clippy things here. We'll get rid of them in the next node here. This blend node, I'm just cropping a little bit from left and right to get rid of those. But this almost looks like a gemstone. And I thought, that's really cool. And then I thought, let me see what happens if I splatter that, So I did a transform and made this just a little bit more round. As you can see, kind of brought in the edges a little bit. And then a different transform down here and made it really tall. And I was playing with these two different shapes. Now, this particular layout only uses the one, but the splatter now accepts multiple inputs, so you could splatter both. So if I go to the splatter, again, it's only using this one at the moment. You can see this is what you get right away, which is really cool, but I just felt like it was way too busy. We needed it to break up a little bit. But anyway, our splatter numbers here, if you're following along, 100, 100, no rotation, 290.16 rotation variation, just a bunch there. A bunch on the disorder were 95.35. Disorder angle 298.03. Size variation 80.33. Output minimum is at a 0.19. And our luminance variation is at a 0.48. And that gives you this here. Now, in order to sort of break this up a bit further, what I did was I blended this with the opacity is coming from another splatter, and I'm splattering just a regular shape node. So basically I'm getting all these super bright circles here, right? And the idea is that this is going to become the opacity for this. So we're only going to get these where these are, and that gives you this. So now you get some stones, but you don't get all the stones, and that looks a lot better, I think. I think it's a bit more realistic, actually, even though these are stylized. A bit more realistic to the distribution. You wouldn't have, tons and tons of stones unless you're making gravel. So, but if you look carefully, they look pretty good. I'm thinking if you were looking top down on this, that's a pretty good quick little stone, So there you go. Okay. And then, of course, over here, this is the buildup of everything. So to make this background, I just did a fractal sum base. I did a transform 2D to kind of shrink it so I get more repetition. I wanted it smaller. And then just blended that with a color, a multiply 0.75, just to make it a little bit darker so the stones would stand out for presentation purposes. And then over here, we're putting together all of our outputs. So again, blending the two together. And we're using this as our opacity for that, so that way the stones appear on top of the background. Very cool. So this becomes the color. The normal map just comes right from here. And then here we have a couple of, let's see, this guy is for our roughness, yeah. So as you can see here, we want a little bit of variation, but we want everything to maintain a pretty rough posture, because this is, dirt and stones and such. Our metallic is absolutely black. Our height I took mostly from our build up here, but what I did with it was I changed a little bit of the blending with the colors to make sure that we got a very dark background, and then the stones kind of were the highlight of it, so that way they come forward more. And again, ambient occlusion, okay? And again, you need to mess with your settings here. Mine are very, very minimalist. I'm at a 0.01 and a 0.02. And then I do a high quality blurred grayscale. And again, this is set I always set the quality to 1. And then really what I mess with is the intensity. So the intensity here is a 0.31. Okay. And then again, of course, solid for the opacity. All right, let's get to some cool stuff. So come down here. Let's hook up our frames. So one of the things I noticed while I was working with the shape mapper is depending upon the numbers that you plug into some of the settings, you can get this strange behavior of the shape kind of just follows the outer edge. But if you use it to your advantage, you can create some really cool looking, look at these cool metal frames. Like imagine if you put a painting in there. This would be great for texture with a painting in there, okay? So let's take a look at how we came about this. So you'll notice that I'm borrowing from previous steps, which is, typical. As I'm experimenting, I'll start creating something, and then I'll, creativity should be messy, and it is. You just kind of throw this over here, throw this over there, and take a look. Then I organize it here to show you guys what my brain was thinking kind of in real time. So coming from up here, we're going to take our cube 3D that is pretty standard, and I did a transform, and what I did was I said, I wonder what happens if I exceed the borders, so I just stretched it out. Then here's the new shape mapper node, and the shape mapper is so cool. You need to play with it and just mess around with all these settings, and you will get some awesome stuff. So by taking this shape, no pun intended, into the shape mapper, and I have polygon pattern output is set to 8, segments is set to 4, so there's only 4 times that it's being used. So it automatically kind of creates this frame. And then I just set the radius to 0.89 and a width of 0.2. And this is what you get. And it's this really cool kind of like frame right away. Now, in order to kind of chop off this little bit of weirdness that happens here because of the way my shape is, what I did here was I created a shape node, and setting it to square, I kind of brought it in just a little bit. And then if you invert grayscale, and use that as a mask, you can see here I can cut it off right before it starts to get wobbly. And there's an automatic kind of nice beveled frame. There you go. So that's one frame, and then I just kept going and saying, what are other types of frames I can make? So here's the same kind of thing, but then I really blew the numbers out further. So this is 0.85, 0.02 with 8 segments. 8 pattern input, 4 segments. And then this one, I did the same kind of thing, but see, it's like thicker. So you have a larger frame, okay? Then down here, I just took that and I blended the two together on top of one another, and this creates a really nice 1 and 2 kind of pattern. So that's pretty cool. And then down here, I noticed that if I go a little bit further with this and I put polygon 8, 4, and radius of 0.89, you can get this kind of effect. And this is pretty weird. So this is a shape mapper from, let's take a look. Grab this line. This is a shape mapper from way up top. So I'm coming from my gemstone, right? So I said, what happens with the gemstone if I have the gemstone and I put that into a shape mapper? So let's take a look. So we come down here, and this is what you get is, it's trying to put the gemstone in these 8 different coordinates, but because of the way I had the settings set from doing my my frames, I got this kind of weird look, and I thought, oh, you know what? This would be pretty cool if we got rid of these side pieces, okay? So to do that, again, we take a shape node, kind of scale it into the center. This is a 0.5 on the X, and I'm going to blend it with a max, add linear dodge, blend it with itself rotated 90 degrees, and then invert it. So we only want to keep what's in these white corners, which happens to be, when we blend it together, these things. So this is a great, perfect little, like, just the corners kind of frame. So there you go. So then this is just combining all the frames together. As you can see here, I do the levels trick where I max out all the values to the one side, to create a quick mask, and then blending them together with, see, this one is a blend of the corners on top of the thick frame, and the levels to lower the overall value, and then I transform it, and that guy's the one that's right in the center here, this right here, okay? And then these others up here, you can see the transform nodes, and we're just putting them all together so that we get each of the different types of frames. So there you have thin, thick, the double, the 1 and 2, and then the one with the corners on top of it, just to kind of show it off, just so that we can kind of put all these frames all in one here to show you all the different frame possibilities in one thing. But each of these I would consider a different output, a different way of doing this. And then over here, this is just building for the presentation purpose. So I used the Metal 003, which comes with Substance Designer. And so I've just brought that in, and I'm blending the color off of that to get this really nice detail in here. And then I'm not even using I should be using this into the normal as well. But the normal is coming only from here. So then blend again with a little bit of color overlay, I think. Let's see, yeah. Blend with a color. And then that becomes the basis of my roughness. A metallic as well, that's fine. We just want to kind of show it off. And actually by using the metallic, it created this sort of, or rather the roughness, it created this sort of a metallic frame look to it. I really like that. There we go, okay. And our height, again, this is the reason, this is the reason for this guy here, lowering the overall values, because I wanted that guy to not poke out quite so much, okay? And then again, our AO, okay? So again, this is very small. So I turned the radius way up for this one, but then brought the height depth down to 0.1. And you see this is what I got, and I was pretty happy with the results of that. And then of course, then I blur it at a low level just to get rid of some artifacting. Okay, so that was our corners. Now, let's take a look at a really easy way to make some cool rings. So rings are typically a little difficult, I find, because you have values and you cut things out, and it doesn't really kind of work out super easy all the time. Well, here's a quick and easy way to make a cool looking ring. And then of course, then you can take this and you can transform it down and you can make it any size and shape you want. Okay, so here's our cool easy ring. Take a look at that guy. That's pretty cool, right? So the way I did this is shape mapper node from, let's take a look at where he originates, all the way back to our original cube again. See, this cube is super handy. So if we come down here, you'll see what we got going on. This ring is created by setting this shape to circle and setting my pattern mount to 0, which is technically impossible, but it's one that's been stretched all the way around. But because the cube has this automatic sort of gradient to it, this is what happens to the gradient. And I instantly thought, wow, that's cool. Now what if I could take the same kind of ring, invert the gradient, scale it inward so that the two meet right at the center. You'd create this really cool gradient from dark to light, and then from light to dark, and you create this nice, cool kind of donut ring shape. So that's what we have here. So pattern is 0, radius of 0.5, width of 0.5, nothing else changed. This is what you get. Kind of perfect. So then I did it again, and this time, let's see how we did this guy. 0.5, 0.5. I clicked on this, flip 1 on 2. And that's a really cool thing you can do when you have a pattern that is, 8 or 12 around. You can say flip 1 on 2, and every other one gets rotated, and that way you get this cool kind of on-off, on-off, on-off look to it. Okay, so we're going to blend the two together. Okay, and again, don't worry about the extra bits on the edges. We'll get rid of that in a second. This transform is to scale this down so that the two meet right at this white line. Okay. Blend here, this is to cut off those little edges there, see? So everything's nice and clean again. I did a blur grayscale just a little bit to kind of soften it because it was giving me some major artifacts when I was trying to do other things. And oh, these are all for those. Okay. So then, I'm just going to blend this with a color background so that we could, present it to you here. And then there's nothing really special here at all. This is the color. It goes right into the normal map. It goes right into the roughness, the metallic, everything here. I'm just throwing this together so that you can see it presented here, because the shape is really the important part. So now if you need this kind of a shape, you see how I technically created the shape from 2 nodes, but then I created this with, you know, a copy of it inverted and then blended together. So maybe 5 total to create this. So I think that's pretty cool. But the base shape here, if you don't count scaling and all that, is with 2 nodes. The Cube 3D and this guy. Awesome. Okay. Let's move right along. So we're going to bring this down here. Let's start taking a look at some of our super fancy stuff that you guys are going to love. You can see already it's pretty crazy. So this I called the Gothic box. And this was the first one I created when I was just experimenting with what the nodes can do. Okay. And then I created a second iteration later on, which I think is even cooler. So this is the Gothic box. And the way I made this is I took our ring that we just made and I said, I wonder what happens if you throw this to a shape mapper. So I threw this into a shape mapper and you get some crazy results, which is awesome. So setting it to circle, pattern of 2, it starts to really warp this. And I thought, wow, that's cool. So then I said, okay, let me blur that a little bit to kind of soften it up. And then I said, let's do a blend and cut one off. And I just want this one kind of almost like a smiley face looking thing. Let's move it to the center. Let's start to mess with it. So I did a blend of a copy of itself over top of itself. On max lighten, you get this really cool effect where these ridges kind of meet and it's almost seamless. It goes to the next ridge, almost like these are like Celtic knots that have been very delicately carved. I just thought that was the coolest thing. So I started to go kind of crazy with it. And let's blend this together with a rotation of itself and you get an even more complex knot. And then you can do a different variation of that by doing a 45-degree angle. You get this, which is really cool. So then I said, okay, if I have this, I scale it down a little bit, and I blend it with this, then you get this. You start to get some really cool stuff, right? Well, then down here I said, okay, let's take this and throw it into the new Splatter Circular. The new Splatter Circular has some pretty cool settings. Look at all the settings to it. I mean, we got a huge update with this, guys. So I threw it into Splatter Circular, pattern of 10, okay? Image input, of course, radius of 0.25. Let's see. So then here's where I started to mess with things. The size, 0.47, 0.25 to kind of get this shape to it. Scale of 2. And then center orientation. Yeah, that's it. I didn't really start to mess with the rotation, but you can do some pretty crazy stuff here with this luminance by ring number. We're going to mess with that later. And you have 2 different rotations now. You can rotate the entire pattern if you need to adjust something, or you can rotate each one as it turns. I think I can do a little bit out here. No, it's rotating all together. Okay, not going to mess with that too much because the live preview with the computer problems we're having, I would probably crash it. So, so by doing that, and then I did the reverse, and then you blend those together, and look what you get. You know, you get some really cool patterns here. Then, just by happenstance, I was messing with the levels and messed with the levels a little bit. Here's what they started to look like. This just looks so cool. It almost looks like these glowing lines. And I thought, man, that's insane. We have to use that. So up here, I put those glowing lines with, I did the same technique off of this. I just copied the node, the levels node, put that into there and blend the 2 together and look what you get. And this, for some reason, really reminded me, these things remind me of, there's an old movie called Never Ending Story, and the cover of the book the kid reads has like this crazy knotted kind of detail into it. So I just thought it was really cool. So then threw this through a histogram scan to kind of create more of a mask out of this, and then blend the 2 together with the mask, and you get this even cool, more layers of depth to it. So then we're gonna levels that into it, and there you go. You get 0.5 on the multiply from the levels of this. Then I took one of these and shrunk it down. I put that on top of it. So there you go. Kind of just reiterating its own shape. Then this guy, we're going to get these corners. So let's go talk about these corners real quick. So these corners, this is a pretty cool effect. I took this guy and I said, this is pretty cool. I want to create like a knotted rope out of this. So down here, in the Splatter Circular, quote unquote, I'm not actually using the circular nature of it. I'm doing pattern 2, pattern amount random 1, ring 3. So this ring amount now, you can have a circle and you can create concentric rings out of it. And we'll do more of that later, so you'll see that. But by doing a ring amount of 3, but we only have 2 and only a pattern 1, you get this kind of effect. So it's duplicating it like this instead of like this. Very cool. Radius of 0.24. Just looking for the things that I've changed. Size of 0.3, 0.4. Okay, scale is set to 1. And we've done nothing else to it, I think. Yeah. So this is what you get, which is really cool. Look at that. So then throw that into a transform, move it up to the corners. Again, blend it with a transform rotated copy of itself, of this. And then here, we're going to do a max lighten. And you see what we get is it's creating those ridges for us and kind of looking like it's almost sculpted. I thought this is perfect for like the corners of a box like this. Isn't that cool? So then that comes up here and we blend that in. And the rest of this again is putting together for presentation purposes. Pardon me. So this is getting the color from that stone or that metal earlier. And then here I am kind of combining the two normal maps. So I'm using this normal map and I think the one from the, scaling down the one from the stone, from the metal to get this in the background here. As you can see as the light hits it. So something like that. And then here we're doing our different maps. So this is our roughness, which is an adjusted version of this, the color blended over it, because I wanted the background to be more rough, and I wanted this metal to kind of shine a bit. And then here, metallic. So this, I kind of went a little different with it. I wanted the background to get a little bit of metalness, but then, of course, these things remain metal, and the pits, of course, not metal. And then our height, everything kind of stands out, with the background being darkest. And then our AO, and of course we blur it just a little bit. And it goes into these blend nodes because these are what we're connecting to the final output. So these would really be the final outputs, but this is our final outputs for the whole thing. I'm just dragging it around with us. Okay. And of course a solid opacity. So we got 2 more. Okay, so just bear with me. Let's go down here. Let's take a look at Gothic box number 2. I think that this one's even cooler. I know that's hard to imagine right now. Let's start hooking this guy up and you'll see him change here. And this guy I think is really cool. So we'll connect him up one at a time. There we go. So this guy I think is really awesome. And let's take a look at how he came to be. Okay. So I took, if you look here with these lines, all these lines are coming from our ring here. So once I created the ring, I had this idea of what happens if I throw that ring into a splatter circular. And you get some really awesome effects, okay? So our pattern amount is 6, our ring amount is 2. So if you put ring amount 1, you get something like this, where it does like 1 copy. Ring amount 2, you start to get these rings, but then each of those rings has a child ring. So that's really cool. And then down here, I messed with the radius, 0.28. Radius ring multiplier, 1. That determines the size of the child ring. And then 1 on the spread. Let's see, 0.5. I didn't mess with any of those. Down here is what I messed with. The luminance by ring number is set to 1. So that means that our initial rings are full brightness. And then everything else starts to get darker and darker as it goes. And you get this really cool effect of how these rings are kind of underneath these rings. And it's sort of creating some automatic height map information for us, which is really awesome. So then I messed with a couple variants of this. So this guy is with 8 instead of 6 rings. Just thought that's pretty cool. This guy is with only 4. So here we're just taking that one shape and 4 times. Down here, this guy is set to 4, but then what I did was I used the random mask down here. Random mask of 0.04. So it'll start to select certain ones and remove them from the pattern. And I thought, that's perfect. So if we come over here, what I did with this was I scaled this guy down into the corner and then did the corners trick where you blend a rotated copy to create the corner pieces here. And then from there, we're going to combine this with something else that we got to go create. So let's go create that. So let's come over here. So I started to create this, I wanted to create like this Ankh. See this guy? I thought, this is really awesome. I made this from, you know, this is all based on a cube, and then just with all the cool new nodes we have. So we made this out of a cube, guys. That's just crazy. So over here, shape mapper from our original circle. The shape is set to circle 4.5. Nothing special about it. Radius of 0. Not really 0, but you know what I mean. 0. So it kind of does this. And I thought, okay, let's transform and make that bigger. Then I said, I want just this top one. I don't want the other 3. So I did a polygon, rotated it 0.12 or 45 degrees, moved it up to the top, and then by using that as a mask, I'm taking just this one. Okay? Then another shape mapper with the same circle, but then for a radius of negative 0.25, which it's possible to have a negative radius, but okay. Negative 0.25, 0.5. Scale it up. Again, use the same thing here and cut out just one. Rotate it. Blend it together. Flip it. Blend it with the previous result. So we're starting to get our Ankh. And then this guy is this guy, but with some serious transforming. Rotate it around, scaled in, stretched out, and then add the results together, and you get this cool little Ankh. Then, as if we weren't done already, throw that into a splatter circular. And again, we're not really using the circular nature, but pattern amount of 1, ring amount of 5, you get this. And it's creating that knotting effect for us. And yet we have these little lines here. Don't worry, we get rid of those later. Actually, right here. There you go. Cropping area 0.26, 0.74, 0, and 1. That gets rid of those little edges. So then, again, a corners thing here where I'm taking that, transforming it to a certain spot, flipping it, you know, merging them together, and you get this. Very cool. Now let's combine that with this, and look at that. That just looks awesome, and that should be, you know, the corners of a cool box. So then I put the thing from the beginning that I talked about where it kind of automatically heights it for you. Put that together. And then here's our presentation stuff at the end, and this is all of this right here. It's just creating a dirt mask because I wanted to put a little bit of dirt on it, just playing with some old techniques. So this is just a normal map into a curvature subel into the dirt, and the dirt is masked from a clouds 2 to a histogram range. Histogram is 0.73. And then, so that creates this, and then I did a blur high quality grayscale just to kind of get that just a little bit, okay? Then that goes into a normal map that I'm then blending with the normal map. Inverting first and then blending. So that way we kind of chip into the surface, because if that's dirt, I want it to be like if there's some chips in it. You can see a little bit of that in, yeah, here. You can see little spots in it, and it's all chipped up and dirty. Just kind of playing a little bit as I was creating all these. So then the color here is very simple. This is this, and then putting in our AO on the bottom. We'll get to that in a second. And then borrowing again from the metal up top, and then putting the dirt on top of that. Okay? So then our roughness here is taken directly from here. And then I did an opacity and brought it down with a subtract from borrowing again from the metal up top. Okay, so that creates this kind of look to it. Very cool. And then this is our height. So our height is actually like a pumped up version of this guy. Over here to an add sub. And the previous node of that comes up from there, again, the metal. And then this, I'm just putting color over top of that. And I'm putting a color over top of this using the dirt in order to make that affect the height. Okay. And then down here we have, I'm sorry, that was off of the metallic. The height is just this. So it's this guy blended with that color. And like we talked about, I created the levels off of this because I wanted to bring the one part down a bit. I didn't want these guys sticking out further than this guy. Okay. Ambient occlusion, again, you need to mess with your figures to your liking, but mine is 0.06, 0.03, and then blurred a little bit, and then of course a solid opacity. Okay, so that was our Gothic Box 2 which I really liked. Okay, so last one for the day. This guy is the one that really needs the opacity. This one I called the emblem, and I was just messing with the Cube 3D and the shape mapper to see what it could do. And what I created was an oddly, I don't know, it reminds me of an old arcade game emblem or some kind of cool cartoon show or something, who knows. So this is what we created, this cool emblem shape, and let's take a look at how we did it. So this I was messing with the Cube 3D in different ways. So I took Cube 3D and made it very tall. So you can see here it's only 0.5 on the X and Y, but on the Z it's 1. So it's very, very tall and cool. And then this is the power of the shape mapper. Okay, so I threw it in the shape mapper, and this time I'm using the Polygon. And with pattern amount set to 4, segments of 3, width of 0.52, and I rotated it 270 degrees to flip it around like this. And there you go. Look at that. It's taking that cube and stretching it nicely. So I thought, this is really cool. Let's see what we can create with this. So I have a different cube here where I just made a smaller cube. We'll see that in a moment. But coming from that cube, throwing that into the shape mapper, set the circle, pattern amount 8, radius of 0.09. Then you get this. And then I said, okay, let's keep going. So the same cube again, but a little bit bigger. So radius of 0, width of 1, you get this. Then throwing it in and saying circle, pattern of 2, you get this. And these are really cool, almost reminds me of like an axe head or something like that. And then what is this guy? I think that's a, oh, this is a duplicate because we need to make some changes. Okay, so these are the cool shapes that we made. And then I said, okay, let's start to throw this together into like a logo of some sort or something. So I like this. I thought it was very cross-like, very almost like an angel or something. So I said, let's put a cube in the background, kind of make a logo out of the cube. So that gives us a nice basis to work on. Then this, we are adding in, I took this, and I'm just going to cut off the top part and just get these bottom 3. And they kind of stuck out from here. I thought that's really cool. Let's keep going with that idea. Same thing again, but let's take the top, just the top 3, so kind of eliminating the corner, and those go up top there, and that looked really cool. So then this guy, we're adding another cube in here, and this cube is flipped upside down, and then this is to create the mask for it, to put it in there. So then you get this kind of underlip, and it kind of broke through the surface here. And these are all with max lightens so that we can kind of combine the light values. So that's pretty cool. Okay, so then what are we going to blend in next? So I took this guy, which is like a larger version of this, and then again, cut off just the top ones, throw those on top there. And this was an unexpected result, but then again, that's what experimentation yields, is this kind of cube shape goes here and stops, and then this one sort of like expands, it gets bigger, and you can have another one expands, it gets bigger. I like that kind of segmented look to it. So I thought, oh man, that's really cool. So then this guy, we are adding, I took this shape, and by taking exactly, or a little less, a little more than half from the top, I kind of cut these off like little winglets. So then by blending those in, you get these little winglets kicking off the ends. So that's pretty cool. I like that a lot. I was like, this is really going somewhere. So then I started to get crazy with it. So then it gets all these extra little doodads on it. But by taking this guy, let's see here. So we're blending, we're blending this with this, and we're doing a min darken. And it created this really cool kind of cutout of just these little winglet things. So I said, okay, let's take just one winglet. So we'll cut that out using the rate of 0.5. And let's move it over and scale it up a bit, stretch it out. And then we're going to, this is the result of blending one of them and then blending that result with it flipped onto the other side. You see you get this kind of cool effect. And because of the max lighting and the way that these gradients work with the cube right away, you get this really cool sort of like that segmented look. This goes into this, there's a surface there. We're building like 3D out of 2D, which is really awesome. So then I said, okay, I want to make some additional ones up top. So I rotated this guy. And again, don't worry about the bottom here because we cut them off right here, 0.62. So we go from this, and we added in this guy in the background. See how he's kind of cutting through the shape. And it's almost like we're pulling up and it's blending right through the shape. So then we do another one over here and it cuts through there and adds these little pipes on the back. I just thought this is super cool, so we have to try this out. So actually, this should go here. There you go. So now it's cutting out the background. So for our final color, again, I'm borrowing from one of the metals that comes with metal 006 this time, that comes with substance. So that's here, and this is our levels trick again to create kind of our shape. So that's the metal. This is the AO here. I should blend this with the AO actually. The AO looks really cool. Although you do get these artifacts when you get it too small, so you blur it to kind of smooth those away. Our normal map here is this guy right from here. Height to normal, and then blur it a little bit to get rid of the artifacts. Okay. Our roughness, I just took directly from the metal and said, sure, you can use that, but only in this area. And for the metallic, it's just pretty much white. I did take from there. There's a little bit of variation to it, but our height is just kind of this guy cut out, thrown in there. And then again, our opacity is this guy so that he can stand on his own. This works really well with the plane, the high quality plane. That works really well with that. Okay, so that's all I have for you today, guys. I hope that you've enjoyed. I will put the file up if I can. I need to make sure that it's the right formatting and all that kind of stuff. But I'll put the file up so you can take a look at this. And I hope that this explanation has really helped and you guys have enjoyed very much. Take a look at the the different notes here. The shape mapper, the cube 3D, and the changes to the splatter circular have been amazing for what the creative potential is now inside of Substance. I mean, it always was. The creative potential was always amazing with this software, but now it just keeps getting better. So I wanted to show you guys what I've been able to come up with, and I hope that it is helpful to you. So, okay, that's all for this week, guys. I hope you have enjoyed. If you have any questions, please let me know. Until next time, keep practicing, get better, and I'll see you next time as the pilgrimage continues.